guys? Welcome to the first episode of the Shy Bears Blitz podcast. I'm Abdul, and I'm here with Omar. We've got a great first episode for you guys today.
So we're going to be recapping what happened with the Chicago Bears in the 2020 season. So where would you like to start off?
We definitely start off with a short recap.
All right, well, let's get into it.
So for the 2020 NFL season, the Chicago Bears finished 8-8. They were second in the NFC North, and this is their second time finishing 8-8 in a row. What are your thoughts about that, Omar?
So we kind of started off pretty good. Obviously, we started off going 3-0, with versing. They're kind of just bad teams: the Giants, the Lions. Then we versed the Falcons when Nick Foles came in, and we all thought he was going to be our savior. And then we all of a sudden hit the Colts, and then we get our first loss, which is fine. Going 3-1, that's fine. And we get a couple more wins. We go 5-1, but that's when it starts going downhill from there.
Oh, no, for sure. When I saw Nick Foles step into that Falcons game, I thought that, the franchise was actually saved. I know that Nick Foles is a certified backup, and that's all his career pretty much has been, but I sort of had a glimmer of hope that he was going to have a great season, and that was pretty much evident that it was false, that was not true when he was in the Colts game. The Colts have a great defense, but that entire game we failed to get first downs. It was all just 3-and-outs the entire game. The offense was just completely inept. And that is pretty much the theme of the entire season, the offense being inept. We had a pretty good stretch on the last couple of games, but that was because we were playing some of the worst defenses. We were playing the Texans, we were playing the Lions, we were playing the Jaguars, we were playing a bunch of bad teams, but our offense still didn't get much better. We were the number one offense, I remember, for about 4-week stretch, but other than that, the team didn't really show much out this year.
So if you look back to our first few weeks in the season, what we had going was the running game. When we had Tariq Cohen, we had him averaging over 4 yards per carry. We had Montgomery averaging over 4 yards per carry. Everything was moving well. We were moving the chains. But then again, we were also versing the Lions and the Giants, and then they were awful defenses. So we can't really do much about that. But when we were versing the Falcons, that's when we first started seeing struggle with Mitchell Trubisky struggling to move the chains and pass the ball, which all of a sudden Nick Foles comes in and he makes a lot of miracle throws, and we end up winning that game. But then once we started versing an actual defense like the Colts, that's when we sort of fell apart because we don't have the offensive line to hold up to protect Nick Foles, who's also he's very, very
Immobile.
unathletic.
Immobile, 100%.
He's a statue, so we can't really do anything. So since we had Rashad Coward on our line, obviously he was one of the best offensive linemen of all time. We weren't able to hold anybody, so everyone it was just free pickings for defensive linemen, for anyone who wanted to get a sack. So it was definitely a struggle for us. We needed to get the run game going, and something we saw at the end of the season was also we got the run game going again with Montgomery. He was we all of a sudden had holes. I mean, that's because our O-line started clicking. We had Cody Whitehair go to guard, and then we had Sam Mustipher go to center, and that really worked out a lot. So with Montgomery, us getting the run game and Montgomery averaging more than 4 yards per carry, us moving the chains with the run game, I think that's what helped us a lot in the end game in the last few weeks of the season, which we didn't realize, which we should have realized, but of course with Matt Nagy's system, it is what it is.
100%. I think that the NFL has Matt Nagy's system figured out. He has some of the most predictable gameplay. I would watch games, and sometimes it'd be fourth down, and I'd say 100%, this is going to be a jet sweep to Cordero Patterson. It's so predictable at times. Matt Nagy, he's praised for being an offensive genius, but I haven't really seen much of that. And when you look at the defense, overall, the defense has regressed as well. We were 8th in DVOA, but we were 1st in 2018. To go from 1st to 8th is a huge decline.
I mean that all started with Chuck Pagano when he came in. The firing of our when Vic Fangio went to the Broncos, became a head coach, and we got Chuck Pagano. And I'm not saying Chuck Pagano's a bad coach by any means. He was a great defensive coach for he was the defensive coach for the Colts, and he was a coach for the Colts, defensive coach for the Ravens back when they had their run. He's a very good coach, but he's outdated. A lot of the new offenses, especially we saw with the Packers game at the end of the season, Matt LaFleur figured out Chuck Pagano easily, read him like a book. Every play he had, Matt LaFleur had something to just counteract it. So I just think because Chuck Pagano was just too persistent into keeping with his old style, and it just didn't work out. He wanted to always blitz and always left the backfield open. I mean, now quarterbacks these days, it's different. It's not like how it was back then, where you have to stay in the pocket. No, they can scramble, they can
Mm-hmm.
move. They're smarter. They know what to do. So he just didn't know how to fix his coaching style to a way that could handle that, and that's why we struggled a lot defensively. And honestly, I'm kind of happy that even though he's a good coach, I'm kind of happy he retired.
I'm
And
happy as well.
yeah, so we'll see what happens with our new Sean Desai guy. Uh, Hopefully he learned a lot from
Mm-hmm.
Vic Fangio. Of course, Vic Fangio did us wonders in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly believe that's why we made it to playoffs. I don't. Matt Nagy's sure he was all right in 2018 offensively. We had an all right offense in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Vic Fangio was the reason we made it to the playoffs back then.
100%. Vic Fangio was pretty much the brain, and that's what I kind of by my tongue realizing that, or that Payson realized that, and he didn't promote. I kind of think back back then on how Ryan Payson didn't promote Vic Fangio to head coach in 2018 when there was a job opening. The defense wasn't that great in 2017 before Matt Nagy came in, but that's because we didn't have the role players. When Pace traded for Khalil Mack in 2018, uh, when he signed Akeem Hicks in 2016, all these defensive role players, especially even Roquan, when he drafted Roquan in 2018 in the first round, 8th overall, all of these factors came into play in 2018, and Vic Fangio, it showed how great his defense is. And when he left to join the Broncos, to become the head coach of the Broncos, it showed how much of a hole that he left when he wasn't here, and we had to have Chuck Pagano's very, very old play style.
I mean, when you think back to 2018, we had Eddie Jackson having a career year. We had Kyle Fuller going crazy. We had everyone was Khalil Mack was going crazy. Akeem Hicks was going crazy. It was going. I mean, we had Leonard Floyd, who was also he can't even beat out a one-on-one. He was going crazy for what he could do. It was definitely just the coaching scheme of Vic Fangio. He was definitely just ahead of the game always, and he always will be. Because yeah, you're looking at the Broncos. Uh, he's doing the same thing over there with the defense. Of course, they have a lot of injuries. That's what's setting him back. But they're definitely just a solid defensive team, and that's just because of Vic Fangio. That's something Chuck gonna go to do for us, which we hoped we could have, because we have Eddie Jackson still. We had Kyle Fuller. He's still the amazing player corner that he is. Uh, we have Akeem Hicks. We had Khalil Mack. We got Robert Quinn, but we all know what happened with Robert Quinn. He's kind of a bust free agent. So hopefully we can just get our defense back to how it was. Last year's defense was disappointing. Everything was disappointing about last season, to say the least. The offense, a pain. We could talk about Matt Nagy more later, but with Chuck Pagano, his playmaking, it just didn't fit with
Mm-hmm.
that just our generation of football.
Speaking of that, I'd like to go back, and I think the first emerging storyline that we should talk about was the quarterback carousel. I know we touched upon it a little bit. Foles versus Mitch, the battle of lifetime. They're pretty much similar. Like the skill between them is not that far. With Mitch, he has the nerves. He tries to do too much for the team, and he ends up pretty much just screwing the team over. With Nick Foles, he doesn't have the legs like Mitch does. Mitch doesn't really use his legs as much, but it's still an escape mechanism for him. I have these statistics. So Nick Foles, he had 1,852 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 80.8 rating. It's pretty average, below average actually in today's NFL. And then Trubisky had 2,055 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and 93.5 rating. When you look at those numbers, it looks like Trubisky is a starting quarterback quality player. It looks like he's above average. Actually, I would say that a 16 touchdown, 8 interception rating is probably average in today's NFL, or probably a little bit below average actually when you see how many touchdowns versus interceptions quarterbacks are throwing. You see Trubisky's record; he went 6-3. You see Nick Foles' record, 2-5. Completely big difference. But the one thing that people don't put into fact is the DVOA, or the defense. The DVOA, which measures how good a defense is, Trubisky played. If the DVOA of his average teams that he played against was a rank, it would be the 23rd defense in the NFL. And then when you take Nick Foles, it's the 12th ranked defense in the NFL. He had to play against some of the best defenses in the league. He had to play against New Orleans. He had to play against the Rams. He had to play against Tampa Bay, the Colts. These are all top 5 player defenses in 2020. Mitch did not have to play these. We can also put that on the offensive line. There it wasn't in formation as it should have been. What do you think?
So what I think is that sure that can be true, but when you look at Nick Foles, he also versus Tennessee Titans, who had the worst defense in the league back then too. I mean, you had them get 0 sacks or like 1 or 2 sacks over the course of like 4 games,
Hmm.
and then Nick Foles played that game, and he was still just as bad as he was the other games. So I wouldn't say it's really the defenses. I mean, of course, yeah, he did versus good defenses. Colts had amazing defense back in 2020, and that's what could have impacted. But he honestly did worse in the Titans game than he did in any other game. That's with a horrible defense. Um, so Mitchell Trubisky's good. Yeah, he versed, I mean, he did verse bad defenses too. So that's why he could have probably stat padded. But I think
Hmm.
most of the stat padding came from garbage time because that's
Oh,
typical Mitch Trubisky.
100%.
Because in if you look at like the last 4 minutes of games when we're down like 3 touchdowns, he'll all of a sudden throw 2 touchdowns. It will always be like a touchdown behind.
Especially same with
But
Foles in the Titans game.
yeah,
The Titans game, we had no offense, and we had what like 3 points going into the fourth quarter, and then he
yeah.
decided to throw 2 touchdowns in garbage time. But it didn't. It doesn't count, and it aids his stats, but it doesn't give a good record of who he was as a quarterback and how the team performed.
See, Nick Foles, he needs a very very good offensive line, which is why he succeeded with the Eagles when they won the Super Bowl. They had one of the best offensive lines in the NFL at the time. He needs because he's just a gunslinger. He needs to sit back in the pocket. He needs to just bomb it down the field. He'll take risks. Mitchell Trubisky, he can scramble, yeah. His decision making is probably one of the worst in the NFL. He cannot make a decision for his life. So I mean, Mitchell Trubisky's more athletic, yeah. They're both bad. That when it comes down to it, they're both just horrible quarterbacks. Of course, they're great people, and I wish Mr. Trubisky the best in Buffalo
Of course.
and Nick Foles. Hopefully, if he gets cut from the team, when he gets cut from the team or traded, um, but it is what it is. I mean, they're not good. They're not our future. They're not. We're not going to be able to win with them. We couldn't win with them. I mean, you saw was last season. You saw in the playoffs against the Saints with Mr. Trubisky.
Hmm.
Even though Mitch Trubisky had a good throw, and then Javon Brickhands Wims whiffed it didn't work out. So they're not the answer. Hopefully, Andy Dalton can at least bring us somewhat of an average play. I don't have high expectations for him.
Me neither.
We'll see what happens in the near future, but yeah, the quarterback was just
Yeah,
Tyler
the
Bray.
quarterback play.
I didn't want to mention him either. He was
Tyler Bray, yeah. That Minnesota game might have been the worst. I think that Minnesota game, Week 10 versus Minnesota, where we had 149 yards of offense, that was
oh
probably the worst game I've ever watched. I cannot. And then when Tyler Bray came in at the end and he tried to he completely missed.
absolutely whiffed it.
I,
Absolutely
I, I
whiffed it.
sometimes think like I'm like I could have made that throw like a check down.
So I yeah, it was horrible. I mean, I don't know. Tyler Bray is a whole different story. There's a reason why
Yeah,
he's a
we don't need to talk about Tyler Bray. He's on the practice squad.
yeah, he's a practice squad for a reason. So I want to bring up something to you. What do you think of the whole switching between Bill Lazor and Matt Nagy's playbook? Obviously, we saw Matt Nagy had it in the beginning of the season and throughout the middle, and then it went to Bill Lazor once stuff wasn't working out. And we
Mhm.
all of a sudden we started building up a run game. So I wanted to get your thoughts about that.
With Matt Nagy, like I said before, Matt Nagy's offense is figured out. The NFL understands Matt Nagy's offense, and with Bill Lazor, watching the last couple of games of the season, there wasn't much spice to that offense either. It was playing to Mitch's strengths in play action. We saw so many play action plays and runs up the middle with Montgomery, and that worked with the offense, but we didn't really see that with Nagy. Nagy, he always wanted Mitch to play under center. He didn't want him to scramble out. Mitch didn't. Mitch has the legs to scramble out, but he doesn't. He doesn't that much, and that might either be due to the game plan, or it's due to him being scared, or just getting inside his own head. With Bill Lazor went 3-3, and Matt Nagy went 5-5. Isn't it kind of perfect in Chicago to go even?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
and I kind of agree with you with Mitch Trubisky. I think it was more
mhm.
mental thing. I honestly think Matt Nagy broke him. That and him just having to deal with quarterback competition here, and then just high expectations in 2019, and then learning that I think it just overcame him, and then with the media absolutely bashing him once he just wasn't performing, I just think his confidence level just shot down. It was horrible for him. And then yeah, he just wouldn't take any runs anymore. He wouldn't scramble. He wouldn't run. Obviously, when you look at his best games, it was always when he scrambled around and he ran. He just didn't do it anymore. He lost his touch. And he doesn't have the accuracy to be a good quarterback because he just whiffs everything.
Hmm.
But um,
But when you watch
obvi-
games like the Cowboys game, when he runs, when he actually decides to run, like the Cowboys game from 2019, you watch games like that and you see Mitch run and you get excited. You think that he actually can play at this sort of quote unquote elite level like he did in that game, and it gives you hope. But that's just not true. Mitch, he doesn't. It sucks that he doesn't know how to read a defense. 3 years into his own career, he would watch. I remember the Packers game from I think it was week 12. He threw in a double coverage and he threw it into triple coverage. You've got to learn how to read defenses this late into your career.
he struggled reading after his first option. He would look at his first option. He would have to. It would have to be Allen Robinson
Hmm.
or nothing. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, but so moving on from the Mitchell Trubisky topic, and going back to the Bill Lazor and Matt Nagy play calling topic, I actually preferred Bill Lazor being the play caller over Matt Nagy.
Hmm.
One thing because when Nick Foles was, I think this was the, I'm not sure what game was it. I think this was either the Colts game or the Titans game where he said, "I know this play isn't gonna work because Matt Nagy's calling it, and I know our offensive line can't hold up, and I'm telling him, hey, I can't. This play won't work, but he's still calling it, and I have to go through with it because I have to take a step forward, and he can't take a step forward because our center can't hold up." So when your quarterback is telling your coach that, and then the coach doesn't change the way he's play calling in order to help the quarterback in any way, that's a sign of just poor coaching. That's you have to adapt. For a good coach knows how to adapt to any defense or any situation. I mean, look at I don't I don't like Matt LaFleur because he's a Packers coach,
Hmm.
but against us, he absolutely demolished us because he was able to counteract. He was able to adapt to any situation that Chuck Pagano threw to him. He knew everything. He's a good offensive coach. When you look at Andy Reid, he knows how to adapt to any situation the defense throws at him. That's something Matt Nagy could never do. And when people call him the offensive genius that he was when he was at the Chiefs, that wasn't because of him. That was because of Andy Reid. When he took over during the playoffs, when Andy Reid went out and told you could take over play calling, the run game absolutely diminished too. The run game absolutely diminished in the playoffs, and that's what made them struggle. That's what sort of led the Chiefs to losing the playoffs during that year. When Matt Nagy was play calling for us last year, Montgomery wasn't getting as many runs as he should. He was giving it to Mitch Trubisky to throw, and Mitch Trubisky wasn't able to throw. There was a lot of four and outs, incompletions, and when Bill Lazor came in, we started having a running game again. Montgomery was blasting through the line. He was breaking tackles. Everything was working well. Of course, uh, Bill Lazor had a lot of questionable calls. He did a couple Matt Nagy plays where he would do like a 4th and 1 with Cordarrelle, but I mean,
It's
I
pretty
honestly
much
prefer.
they're
Yeah,
not great. They're both not great
they're both
options.
not great, but if I were to have to take one, it would have to be Bill Lazor
I
because
100% agree.
it. I I don't know. Yeah, it would have
No,
to
no,
be Bill
I
Lazor. Matt Nagy,
understand.
yeah.
That's pretty much it. But to give a bright spot of the offense, because we've been talking about the offense and how uh, disastrous it was for this year. What do you think about the surge of Montgomery? The huge leap that he took from last year to this year. What do you think about that?
So I'm actually wearing my Montgomery shirt right now. I'm actually very happy that Montgomery came out how he did in 2020 because in 2019 everyone was calling he was going to say they were saying he was not as good of a running back as most people were making him out to be back in college because back in college he broke the record for most broken tackles, and then he comes into the NFL and he's not meeting up to expectations. He's getting what he got under 4 yards per carry in 2019. So a lot of people were also comparing to Josh Jacobs, who was a first round pick, and Josh Jacobs, of course, he exploded in 2019. Uh, and then when Montgomery came in last year and he started going off, I think he had like 600 to 800 yards in the last 7 games or something. He was going crazy. So I was very happy for him. It definitely helped out our offense. Montgomery is definitely our lead back. I honestly think one of the best top easily top 10, maybe even top 5 backs in the league. I mean, if you look at our offensive line with what he did, how many people broke over 1K yards? not that many, and then you got Montgomery doing it. How many people are able to receive? Montgomery's a great receiving back. It's
Great,
something
great receiving back.
something people don't talk about ever. He's a great receiving back. He makes amazing catches. If it wasn't for him, I doubt Nick Foles would have had. Nick Foles would probably have at least probably like 200 yards, 300 yards less than his 1400 whatever yards that he had.
Hmm.
So Montgomery definitely is a great running back. I'm happy we have him. Um, what's your opinion on it? I mean,
I'm so happy. I mean, he stepped in this role because obviously Tariq Cohen got injured in the was it the Atlanta game that Tariq Cohen tore his ACL? It was very early on in the
yeah,
season, and
yeah,
he was
it was
forced into
really
that role. Tariq Cohen is mainly the second back, being a receiving threat, but it pushed Montgomery more into the receiving games. Like you saw that last year, he had 1,074 yards from scrimmage, and then this year he had 1508. That's almost a 500-yard increase in yards from scrimmage of catching and receiving, or catching and rushing. It's a huge jump, and you see that he was great in the receiving game as well. He had 54 catches for 438 yards. He was very reliable. You would see him at points in even in the Saints game, which we ended up losing. He was one of the critical pieces in catching like first downs, and he's such a great receiver. And I hope that we keep him more in the receiving games next year when Tariq Cohen comes back. And we most recently signed what is his name?
Damian Williams.
Damian Williams, playoff Damian is what they call him. We
Yeah,
signed him, and I think that he's going to be great. I don't expect him to take much from Monty, but it's great to
no,
take some of the pressure off of him because you saw that last year. There were times where Monty would go off the field, and I would see like, oh no, I'd freak out because if Monty's gone, this offense has no hope
yeah.
at all.
You got Ryan Null. You could running
Oh,
-2
Ryan
yards.
Nall.
Yeah, I mean, I like Ryan Null,
I like Ryan Nall too. These,
but
these are all
yeah,
good guys, but I mean,
yeah, these are
yeah.
all good guys, but I mean, when it comes down to it, on the field, it's a struggle for them.
Hmm.
Uh, Something that I want to touch up on is that Matt Nagy also wanted Montgomery because he was a receiving threat, receiving back in college too. So he got his guy because I mean that's the reason why we cut Jordan Howard back then was because Jordan Howard wasn't that good of a catcher.
Hmm.
So Matt Nagy wanted more of his Kareem Hunt type of guy that they had in the Chiefs. So that's why he drafted Montgomery. But then he comes in, and then Matt Nagy doesn't use him a lot in the passing game. So that's a problem. All of a sudden, you have this great receiving back who hasn't been able to show off his skill set, and you're throwing it to Allen Robinson in quadruple coverage. Even though I love Allen Robinson, and he could probably make that catch, it's just a bad decision because that's how you
Hmm.
throw interceptions. That's how Nick Foles threw a lot of interceptions, and that's how Mitch threw a lot of interceptions too. So yeah, Montgomery was definitely very, very, very nice to have him break out last year, and he's definitely just gonna be a demon for us in the future. So something I want to mention now, since we touched upon Montgomery, is and we're talking about the good things about the offense is Mooney and Komet, how they've been doing. I mean, obviously we've seen how Mooney is, and I know you're a big fan of Mooney, so I want to let you talk about him.
100%, man. Mooney is a star. I remember when I watched the Giants game and he got that insane curl route touchdown in the back of the end zone, and I knew that this guy was gonna be a star. I'm giving him obviously I might be overhyping him a little bit, but he is one of the only bright spots that we've had in this offense and for the future. Uh, and Among his receiving class, he was one of the best. I mean, he was a steal. We took him in the fifth round. He's I'd arguably say that he's better than some of the other receivers in the class. Like, I'd take him over Brandon Ayuk. I'd take him over Henry Ruggs, who was injury prone. He had an injury. He was injured that year, but Mooney had insane stats for terrible quarterback play. He was fourth in yards. He had the lowest drop percentage. He only dropped one pass, and it was during the Jaguars game. It was a terrible pass from Trubisky. Mooney is going to be a star. He was such a bright spot in the
I
offense. He
agree.
had 98 catches, or no, he had 98 targets actually, 61 catches for 63 yards. And when you look at those targets to the actual catches, that doesn't really display him as a wide receiver because if you look at even Allen Robinson's stats, only 60% of his balls are catchable because the quarterback play is not there. I would see some compilations. I would see. I know you've seen the one with Jalen Ramsey when he dots up, he breaks the ankle of the best
Yeah,
cornerback in the league, and the ball just sails over his face. When I
yeah,
see that, I just cringe because I know if he catches that, it's going to the house, and that's a touchdown, and we most likely win that game
and that
because
happened numerous times.
it's happened so many times that he's gotten overthrown, and I cringe when I see it. But when I see that, I know that there's he's a bright spot in the offense. He has a future. I'm hoping that Dalton can get the ball to him in 2021. What do you think about him?
I mean, I love Mooney too. I mean, Mooney's definitely a bright spot in our, is a huge bright spot in our offense. The man has hands, the man has speed, the man has route running. He has everything. He's a total package. I mean, but the one thing that worries me about Mooney is if he could stay healthy. I mean, Mooney can, yeah, he could run extremely fast. He can juke people out. He can make some sick catches. But the problem is the dude is very very small compared to, you got all these massive defenders coming in and smashing him. But I mean, that's where the speed comes in. Because when he got hit and he got that injury, he can get hit like that. I mean, he's kind of like, how would I say? I don't want to say a twig because he's an athlete and the dude's
Hmm.
probably
But
jacked.
he's small. He's what, like
He's
five
smaller.
nine.
Yeah, his whole like physique is tiny.
Hmm.
So he gets hit by one of those like you got Darius Leonard coming in and smashing him. That's an injury easily.
Hmm.
Um, so hopefully he's not injury prone like that. Even though we kind of did see it, he kind of got a big hit in, and he had to go out for a couple of games.
He got injured in the Packers game, Week 17, and he didn't make
Oh,
an
was Week
appearance.
17?
Yeah, he didn't make an appearance in the
Oh yeah, in
playoffs.
the playoffs. That's right. That's right. So he's definitely a bright spot in our future. If we were able to get a good quarterback, I wouldn't say like, yeah, Dawson might help out a little bit if he's better than Trubisky, or I mean that's a stretch saying he's going to be a lot better than or whatever. But if we were to able to get a good quarterback, he's easy a 1K yard receiver, easy a 1K yard
100%.
receiver, and it's a good thing that we got A Rob back because with those two duo for next season, it'll be clean. But yeah, Moni's definitely a good addition to ours. So what do you think about Komet though? You get
I
Komet and stick
think
around?
Komet's pretty good. I like what I saw from him this year. There was I have not too many bad things to say about him other than just the one thing that bothers me is just working on the fumbles. There were a couple of times where he fumbled the ball, and I remember even in the Saints game when he fumbled the ball and he got saved by the referee. We ended up losing that game anyways, but just working on the fumbles 100%. I think that if Jimmy Graham stays on the roster for next year, and he continues to learn from him, he can be our next Greg Olson. I think that he was a solid pick. He was in the second round. I don't remember any other tight ends from the 2020 draft that had a great year.
I think the Saints one had a somewhat decent year. I forgot his name. I think it was like something Trotman, the
Saints
tight end for
one.
the Saints. So yeah,
I
they had
I
a,
think the one from the Browns had an okay year, I'd say that Komet had the best year. Harrison
yeah.
Bryant from the Browns, but I'd say that Komet had a decent year. His when you look at his stats, he only had about like 200 yards receiving. That's 100% because he did not get the snaps. He did not get
Oh, of
snaps.
course. I mean, he didn't. He was mostly on blocking for the first like 6 7 games of the season. Even it was for like 10 games of the season. Obviously, he was actually a really good blocker too. So that was a nice touch. He was blocking. He was one of our best blockers in the beginning of the season. And as a rookie tight end compared to the old lineman that we had, that's kind of like disappointing for the old lineman. But yeah, it was good to see him actually being able to block. I mean, because Jimmy Graham can't block for his life. And then I like Jimmy Graham though. He's one of the best receiving threats in the game
Oh, he was
for
great in the red
touchdowns.
zone this
Yeah,
year.
yeah, great for the Red Zone this year. Yeah, a little bit overpaid. But he's been mentoring Komet pretty well. So Komet's made some very nice catches. The one against the Rams games where he cut like that 40 yarder, he
Yeah,
mossed that
and
one
then
dude.
he immediately got benched. He immediately got
Yeah,
benched.
immediately got benched. And something I like about him is that he likes to hit people. He likes to get extra
Oh,
yardage.
mean
He
runs,
likes
the
to hit
angry
people. Yeah,
runs. He
yeah.
loves to go on
So
those.
so so I like when I see something like that because it reminds me of like a Rob Gronkowski or George Kittle. I mean, I'm not comparing it to them, but it's just something I like to see because obviously he needs to work on his, of course, like you said, his handles. He keeps on falling the ball a lot, but if he were to work on that, he'd be dominant tight end.
Now that we've talked about the rookies, I'd like to talk about how we missed out on, or I'd like to ask you what your opinion on how much we missed out when Tariq Cohen got injured early on in the year.
Yeah, us missing out on Tariq Cohen was huge because we had a lot of problems on our special teams during the punt return because I mean obviously we had the Ted Ginn Jr.
And we had
And
Dwayne Harris too. Dwayne Harris, the one who muffed the punt versus the Vikings on Monday Night
but I'm pretty
Football.
yeah, but I'm pretty sure he also tore his tricep there. So
He did?
because yeah, it's because right I don't know if it was there, but he didn't come back for another punt after that, and then after that they put him on the
Oh.
report for tearing his tricep, so he's out.
Okay. I'm gonna
Yeah,
give him the benefit of the doubt there now. Okay, now I know
but
that.
I mean honestly, he was somewhat decent for us for the 3 4 punts that he did. Besides that one punt that he muffed it, yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, we had Ted Ginn Jr. and obviously we that dude had a lot of returnable punts, didn't make it. So we lost out on a lot of yards. Tariq Cohen just a game changer on that punt return. Tariq Cohen's also a game changer in our road game and our pass game too, because in the first 2 games of the season, our road game was popping because of Tariq Cohen in Montgomery. He was averaging over 4 yards per carry. Tariq Cohen is also a receiving threat. I mean, the dude is the shiftiest man on the field. You have to have somebody on him, or else he's gonna juke you out to the end zone. So yeah, we were definitely missed out on Tariq Cohen a lot. Um, so what's your opinion on that too?
I have a couple opinions on that. I think that we definitely missed out a lot on Tarico not being on the field. Like you said, he's a great receiving threat. He's a great running threat as well, despite his size. When we had to get Cordero Patterson and force him into the RB2 role, I didn't think that that fit the game plan at all. You obviously see Cordero's a great guy, and I loved seeing him on the field. But there were times when he would make plays and it is mapped out. The defense understands Matt Nagy's offense. They know what they're going to do with Cordell Patterson. I can't tell you how many times I saw wildcat plays that are not fooling anyone, where it's
Yeah,
Cordell Patterson in the backfield and he's catching the ball and he's running up the middle. Uh, I think Cordell Patterson is a good player. I love that how much enthusiasm he put into the Bears. You know, like every week he had the "How about them Bears" videos when
oh
they
yeah.
got a
Whenever
dub.
we won, but
Yeah,
then we
whenever
always
we
lose them.
won. But I love Cordell Patterson as a Bear. I didn't like the RB2 role that he was put in, but as a receiving threat and also in the kick receiving game, he obviously had that kick return touchdown to
Yeah.
tie the record all time versus the Vikings in Monday Night Football. Seeing that, I liked him on special teams, loved him on special teams actually. But then when I see him put in that RB2 role, I wasn't too happy about that.
Yeah, he was definitely our best special teams player. I mean, whenever we're punting, he was the first guy down the field trying to get that tackle. But yeah, during the run game, I mean, he had a couple of good runs,
Hmm.
but during that run game, he struggled. He's not a running back. Honestly, I see him more of like a Devin Hester type, where he should just stick to special teams more than and every once in a while he'll get a throw. But yeah, that man is a monster on the kick returns. Always gets us to the 50-yard line, to the 40, 50-yard line, always. The only thing we could do, we can't capitalize on that. We'll get to the 50-yard line. We don't have enough to capitalize on that. But yeah, missing out on Tariq Cohen, definitely a pain. Cordero Patterson, hopefully we get him back. We can re-sign him. I mean, he still hasn't been re-signed by anyone, but definitely a monster for us.
Now that we've talked about pretty much the entire offense for the 2020 season, I'd like to talk about the defense. I know we touched upon Chuck Pagano's playmaking, but what are your opinions on Chuck Pagano's performance as a defensive coordinator for the 2020 season? I know that he's retired now, but maybe you can provide analysis on his playmaking and his decisions during the 2020 season, and what will change now that we have Sean Desai as defensive coordinator.
So something I mentioned earlier on in the podcast was that Chuck Pagano liked to roll with the old style of playmaking for the defense, which is why he got read like a book by a lot of coaches. He was very predictable. You almost knew when he was going to blitz. You almost knew when he was going to drop back for coverage. Um, it didn't work out. We always got burned in the defense. We started off strong, but then once every team started figuring us out, our defense just crumbled. Of course, we had the signing Robert Quinn, who didn't really do anything. He didn't capitalize on much. He was able to get some pressures. He had that sick
First snap, the
strip,
first snap,
first
dude.
snap, the sick strip fumble sack, and then after that, it was just nothing.
It was
It
downhill
was
from
like he
there.
was not on the field. I would have liked to see Travis Gibson, the rookie we drafted,
Hmm.
but he didn't come out that much. He looked like he had a lot of flashy plays, but Chuck Pagano definitely needed to retire because his style wasn't working out for today's football.
100%. I feel you. Like I said, we were first in DVOA, or we had the number one defense in 2018, and we had the eighth defense for the past 2 years. And when you're spoiling that, that decline is insane. Like you said, he would always know when he's blitzing. I remember the Green Bay game when there was a huge blitz on Aaron Rodgers, and you cannot give up coverage to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, he's the
Oh
MVP,
no. Yeah.
100%. You can't give up coverage to Aaron Rodgers. So when you have a linebacker, you have Danny Trevathan, who is not the fastest on the field, obviously. When you have him in coverage versus Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he's gonna throw a bomb, obviously. And just seeing that was just the epitome of Chuck Pagano's defense within the Bears system, and that's why I didn't appreciate it. Khalil Mack is one of the best edge rushers in the league.
Hmm.
I would always see him in coverage. They weren't playing
Yep.
to his needs, and that's why I think the defense failed, and the defense pretty much gave up. Like you saw, the defense give up in 2019. The defense sort of gave up for a little bit in 2020. We were on that six-loss streak, but there were a couple of defensive injuries that happened this year, and would you like to touch up on those and their
Uh,
impact?
so obviously we had with the whole COVID thing, we had Eddie Goldman not coming in, so that obviously affected our D line and our run game. Um, we also had, uh,
We had Akeem
I mean,
Hicks. Akeem Hicks
yeah,
got injured.
Akeem Hicks got injured for a little bit. I
Roquan
think
got
Khalil
injured.
Mack, Roquan got injured. Khalil Mack was always on the injury report. He had a back problem. He had it was like shoulder, it was like back, that it was everything. So he was always injured too. I think that definitely just harmed us. I mean, because the defense was always on the field. They had no time to rest. Our offense would come in for now. All of a sudden, our defense were in for like 80% of the game. So when you have all these people coming in, and obviously we had Trevathan, who started off really bad, who we all thought was injured, started off really bad, but he started picking it up over time. But he doesn't have the speed that he once had.
Hmm.
Struggling in the coverage. Roquan Smith is just one of the best players on our defense for last year. Him and Jaylen Johnson, easy sparks. So hopefully something I want to see for us is with Sean Desai, if he can help bring back the old Vic Fangio defense. But yeah, injuries definitely ruined us a little bit. But I think missing Eddie Goldman was really big impact. What would you think about us missing Eddie Goldman?
I think missing Eddie Goldman was a huge impact because obviously him and Akeem Hicks, they're a tag team. They're great on the D line. They're great on the blocking the run. And that missing a player such as Eddie Goldman, your defense is going to deteriorate or your defense is going to decline. Missing him, we had some bright spots of the defense. We had
Long
Mario
Nichols stepped up.
Edwards. Bilal
Yeah,
Nichols did step up. Bilal Nichols
Long
had
Nichols
a
did
minor
step up a little
breakout
bit.
year, so
Yeah.
that was great. We had Mario Edwards who pretty much came out of nowhere, and he had a decent year. He had a great
Yep.
game against the Texans. He great year overall. We had Brent Urban, who's now with the Cowboys, but he did decent. We had even Roy Robertson Harris, who's now with the Jaguars. All of these players came on the D line and they stepped up, and two of them got the bag. They got paid. So it just shows you how how uh how much we have depth on the D line.
We
Uh,
really do. We have talent everywhere on our defense.
mhm,
We have quarterbacks. Obviously, we had a struggling Buster Screen, but we got that taken care of.
mhm.
Jaylen Johnson was having an amazing year as a rookie. Kyle Fuller was doing his thing. He was just locking down anybody. Eddie Jackson struggled a little bit, but he was obviously doing his thing too. Deshaun Gibson came in from as a too. We signed him as a free agent. He was doing crazy. We were doing good overall. It was definitely just a lot of the coaching affected us. I want to say a lot of the coaching, Robert Quinn and Buster Screen were kind of like our weaknesses for that defense. Because if you remember how when we were versing any team, pretty much Jalen Johnson would have somebody locked down, Kyler Fuller would have somebody locked down, Roquan Smith would be locking down the anyone who was doing slants towards the middle. But then you had whoever Buster Screen was covering, just thrown to him always blown. So that was definitely a problem for us. Eddie Goldman, the run game, we did struggle towards the end. Akeem Hicks having the injury that affected us too in the run game. We missed him a lot. If we had Eddie Goldman, that would have helped out a lot. But with him coming back and we have Akeem Hicks, and we have Bilal Nichols with that breakout year, and Mario Edwards also. We did lose Brett Urban, but we should have a solid D line. And if Sean Desai
We should.
doesn't if Sean Desai doesn't capitalize on that, then it's actually a shame with all the weapons we have in our defense.
And like you were talking about when you said that Eddie Jackson had sort of a down year, Sean Desai is a safeties coach. This
Yeah,
defense is going to be oriented towards our defensive backs. We have I don't believe we've signed a couple of safeties, but I don't think these guys are the starting safeties like Dion Bush. Uh, I think that we possibly re-signed to Sean Gibson, which would be very nice because we need a strong safety. But the defensive backs should be good next year. We have Jaylen Johnson, who struggled. He was out for 4 weeks. He got injured, or I think he was out. Yeah, about 4 weeks. He towards the end of the year he got injured against the Texans game. But so we had him. We missed him a lot. We definitely felt it a little bit, but we had decent depth within the cornerbacks. We
oh, yeah, we have
had Kindle
THC,
Vildor.
Kendall Vildor, DeAndre Houston Carson. I mean, we have good depth in our backfield. We just don't have somebody that can help them and capitalize on them. So yeah, we do have Sean Desai, who's our safeties coach. So hopefully our defensive backs will be a lot stronger. We did lose Jay Rogers though. Jay Rogers was pretty big for us for the defensive line. He went and joined the Chargers as their defensive coordinator. So hopefully he can. A lot of people are saying he's going to be a really good coach for us. We did choose him over Jay Rogers, so hopefully he does make a huge impact, sort of like how Vic Fangio did for us. So I mean, only time will tell. Chuck Pagano wasn't the answer. I've said that many times, and I'll say it again. Chuck Pagano wasn't
Hmm.
the answer. Hopefully, Shine Desai will. I mean, it's just more of a wish type of thing.
Yeah, looking
So
towards the future.
yeah,
We've talked a lot about the defense. I think that we should talk a little about special teams. We mentioned that the impact of Cordell Patterson and what would happen if we lose him, or if we lose him, because he hasn't been re-signed yet, and we're almost through mid-April. So I don't see him returning, and he was great. 35 returns for 1,017 yards and a touchdown. He was great in the return game. I'd also like to ask you about the birth of Pharaoh Cairo Santos,
yeah.
the savior of Chicago.
Cairo was definitely a big surprise for us. For someone who came in, when you look at his previous years, it looked like he wasn't doing that well. He would make a lot of kicks, but like after the 40-yard line, he would just struggle. But he came in just knocking one after the other. He was definitely a gold mine for us. I was very happy that we extended him. Hopefully, he can stay as consistent as he was back then. We won't have to make any
I
mistakes
hope
like
so
we did
too.
with back in
After we pay the kicker,
uh,
they just forget how
yeah,
to kick, man.
for real. So yeah, we did have our curses back in the past. Hopefully, since he's a pharaoh himself, he can break those curses. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
I saw that he posted a 94% field goal percentage, and he scored 126 points for us. That is
Yeah,
insane.
he
He
was
was one of the best special. He was a top
our
three
best
kicker in the
scorer.
league.
He was our best scorer.
Oh, he was
Let's
definitely
put
our
it.
best
He was our
scorer.
best scorer. Yeah. Him and Jimmy Graham were our best people to put just points up on the board for us.
The
So
feeling of not having a total anxiety attack when
for
our
real.
kicker is kicking from past the 45-yard line is great.
Yeah,
I love this feeling.
yeah, and I don't like to think of old kickers towards the Bears besides Robbie Gold.
Hmm.
So right now, Cairo Santos, I think all of Chicago was just blessed to have him.
Hmm. I think for our last segment, for next week, we're gonna talk about a little bit about the draft of 2020, grading it. We're gonna do mock drafts, and we're gonna talk about a little bit about Ryan Pace as a GM next week. But I think our ending topic today should be an Allen Robinson extension. What do you think
You
about
wanna?
that?
I was gonna actually put that back on you. So I want to see what you think about it first.
I think we have to lock it up. Like we have to. You saw the Disney deal. The Disney deal is $100 billion for 10 years for the NFL. If you do that, that's what 3 billion or something per NFL team. Obviously, they're not gonna. That's not gonna go all into Virginia McCaskey's bank account. But the post COVID, we saw that the salary cap shrunk to 182.5 mil. We're going to see it skyrocket within the next 2 years. You saw the Seattle Seahawks. They gave Tyler Lockett like 18 million a year.
Yep.
A Rob is so much better than Tyler Lockett. He's
A
so
Rob is a
much better.
top 5 receiver. In my opinion,
I
top
I
5, top 10. I'll say top 10 because there's
I
gonna
could
be
see him as like number 5 or number 6. I can see that 100%. But he's
but
guaranteed a top
but
10.
yeah, but biased, very biased answer. He's a top 5 receiver. Unbiased, he's a top 10 receiver. So yeah,
Agreed.
he's a definitely. I think he's a definite lockup. As long as he doesn't ask anything more than like 20 mil, I would say lock him up for the future. I would give him 19 mil. To be honest, maybe 20 mil. But if he asks anything more than that, that's
I
we're gonna
think
have to
that's
move on.
reasonable with the way that the salary cap is going to skyrocket. I think that we have to lock him up. Give the man his money.
But we also don't have a quarterback to throw to him. So
That is true.
I as much as I like Allen Robinson, we're honestly just not doing him any favors for keeping him with
Hmm.
our quarterback play. So I want to see Allen Robinson do great. If we can get a good quarterback to help maintain or make Allen Robinson's dreams come true of reaching like however many yards he wants to get, 1,500 yards per season, being the best receiver of all time, blah blah blah. We're gonna need a good quarterback, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to say I would extend Allen Robinson if we're paying him 20 mil or less. But if it's anything more than 20 mil, I don't think we can keep him.
Agreed. That too much will cripple the team. We can't have people on that sort of contract if they're not someone like an elite quarterback or even Khalil Mack. I love Khalil Mack. You see all the jerseys. Khalil Mack is my favorite player of all time. His contract is crippling because he's getting paid so much. The production, if you're going to pay a person that much, they have to control the offense to that scale. If we have terrible quarterback play and we're paying Allen Robinson 20 million a year and the quarterback can't even get him the ball, then it's worthless when you think about
Yeah,
it. But it's just an ongoing topic, and I
yeah.
think that hopefully he'll be extended within the year because after this year he's gone. But I look towards
I
the
mean,
future, and I hope we
if
extend him.
if he's gone, yeah, I hope we extend him too. But if he's gone, I mean, I wish him the best too. I mean, if he goes to an actual good quarterback, then he's gonna ball out. Everyone's
Hmm.
gonna give him the respect that he deserves. Uh, but with us, I want to keep him because he's the only one who can catch horrible quarterback plays. But he's struggling with us. He's not liking it. I mean, you can see he's always posting on Twitter how
He's
if he had
liking
actual good,
tweets.
yeah, he's liking tweets of joining other teams, and he's liking tweets of people are saying like, oh, if Allen Robinson was with blah 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 with like the Chiefs or the Packers, he would have 2,000 yards or whatever, and he'll be liking all these tweets. But yeah, honestly, I could see it if you keep on throwing to him. I mean, the dude's a monster; he catches anything. But I mean, it is what it is.
It
But
is what it is.
yeah, I think that's where we're gonna have to end off on it.
Of course. All right, guys. Thank you for listening to the first episode of Shy Bears Blitz. We've got a great episode for you next week. We're going to be talking about the 2020 draft, grading each of the players drafted for the Bears. We're going to be giving mock drafts. It's going to be a great episode. Thank you guys and take care.